more lessons from nature. Welcome to The Hopefulist with me, Wendy McClure. This is where we turn those nasty, negative thoughts into positive and work toward a happy, fulfilled life. Now, let's get started. Woo, woo. Thank you for joining me on The Hopefulist today. I hope you are having a fantastic week so far and being super productive and getting all of the things done that you are hoping to do. Quote of the day today: listen to the hollerings of your heart instead of your doubts and fears, and leap bravely into the unknown. I get into this a little bit in the topic today, but we always just go to the worst case scenario instead of thinking, what if it all just works out? What if it actually goes better than we plan? Because that's quite possible. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so I have this picture up, and I'm going to try and get a better one. But I have this picture of this plant that I purchased in the beginning of summer. It was a really little plant when I bought it. It's like a begonia type plant. I know it's not an actual begonia, but I bought them with my begonias, and I just didn't get around to doing the Google flower plant thing or whatever, so I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it has turned into a monster. It is a monster plant at this point, just growing all over. But the interesting part about this plant is that it's all grown to one side. It's all leaning over to one side of the pot. And the reason that it is because I had it up against a wall in the porch. I bought some flowers specifically for the porch this year, flowers that wouldn't need a ton of sun, so that I could fill my porch area with lots of flowers so that I could just sit back and enjoy them. So this one was put up against a wall. What do you do when you are up against a wall? Do you panic? Do you give up? Do you move to another area where there is no wall? We can learn a lot from this plant. Its will to live and thrive under less than ideal situations shows us how we can do the same. It reminds me a little of those weeds. You see those weeds that come up between the cracks in the pavement? Where there is a will, there is a way. But back to the plant. Not only did it figure out how to survive with its back against a wall, but it totally thrived. So what can we learn from this? That we need to adapt and change in different surroundings. Yes, that is the correct answer. Good for you. You got it right. We often find ourselves in situations that we don't like. We feel like our back is against a wall. And a lot of times, we just grin and bear it. Or we deal with it in unhealthy ways, or we lash out in unhealthy ways. If it's your job, you typically grit your teeth and keep moving, right? But in your relationships, you may react in ways that isn't good for you or anyone else involved. It wears on your relationship, and it wears on you. Messes with your peace of mind and adds stress to your already hectic life. So let's find a better way. Take a look at the plant in the picture again. It did what it needed to do without help from anywhere. But lucky for us, we're human and we can ask for what we need. If a situation at work is draining, see if you could talk to a higher up for a resolution. If that doesn't work, then maybe it's time to look for a new job. Now, I don't say this lightly. I know how important it is to have a job that brings an income to pay your bills. And maybe that is the way that you can look at this to get you through. It's a means to an end. Clock in, clock out. Leave work at work. But meanwhile, look for something different. Look for somewhere that won't take you and your skills for granted, or whatever the unsavory situation may be. Do not get stuck in an uncomfortable, stressful situation because you are afraid the next situation may be worse. This goes back to the quote, because what if it's actually better? Let's start thinking it will all work out exactly the way we hope. It takes just as much energy to think that way as it does to think negatively. In fact, it probably takes less because then you're not constantly stressed out and worried. But I beg of you to not continue in a job that causes you stress on the daily and sends you home an unhappy camper. Life is just too short. I lost my job over 2 years ago. The situation there, it was close to intolerable. I worked with someone who did everything they could to make my work life as difficult as possible, to the point that he lost us both our jobs. On top of it, the company didn't value me enough to address the situation and put an end to the mistreatment. Instead, when they found themselves with their back against the wall, they lashed out and let us both go. I still feel an astounding amount of injustice in that situation. I lost my job due to the actions of someone else, and that is a very hard pill to swallow. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know I talk about this often. I've been in the field of radio broadcasting for many years. It's not uncommon to lose your job for any number of reasons. But this time it just felt so wrong. Kept telling management my partner worked against me constantly and made his vendetta against me a priority over the good of the show that we worked on together. When it got to the point where they could no longer defend him, they let us both go. And yeah, I was pissed. Felt betrayed. I actually still have dreams, more like nightmares, of me going back to that place of work. And they have the audacity to pair me up with the same guy again. It's definitely a nightmare. It was in the first week of that job loss that I decided I never wanted to be in that position again, to potentially lose my job because of someone else's actions. This is when I decided to go out on my own, start this podcast and this business. I wanted to be the boss of me and not to have to depend on the whims of crazy people who protect someone over and over, yet leave me standing out in the cold. Now, I can tell you this. It's been slow going. I'm very lucky in the fact that I have a husband who makes decent money. We've been able to cover the bills for the last 2 years. You know, I stuck with it. I'm sticking with it because I believe in myself. I believe in my message. I believe in the vision. And I know this business will get to where I dream it can go. And honestly, I've never been happier in my life. And if that doesn't tell me to keep going, nothing else will. I have more meaning in my life. I have goals. I'm growing constantly. I'm constantly learning and figuring stuff out. And I so much want to truly help people. You know, the whole point of this thing was for me as the reformed pessimist to help others like me change their negative thoughts into positive. And that's what I try to do every week. Every week I try to come up with a story or a topic or something that can lift you up and empower you and help you to move on in a positive way. And I'm going to keep at it. In the meantime, we've been creative in how we are getting our bills paid. There have been some really scary times, but we've always made it through. Where there is a will, there is a way, like that weed coming through the cracks. And trust me on this one. It's not always about resources. It's about resourcefulness. I beg you to take my advice on this. If you are in a job or career that you hate, makes you miserable, and drains the life out of you, good God, get out. Look for something else while you make your escape plan. But for goodness sake, your health and livelihood is more important than any job. Just some food for thought. And I can say this now because it's hindsight for me. I refused to quit that job, no matter how difficult he made my life because I didn't want him to win. I wasn't going to let him chase me out of a job that I loved, aside from the fact that I had to work with him every day. And I look back now and I think to myself, was I winning? Was I the winner? I don't think I won. I feel like I'm winning now, though. And that's the important part. Don't let a job overtake your life. Now, when it comes to relationships that drain you and make you feel like your back is against the wall, break out of that as well. Communication is key here. If these are close relationships, then you need to have a discussion about what is wrong and how it can be attempted to be fixed. I just read on one of the many group pages on Facebook that I am in, a woman who was sharing that her husband had asked for a separation. She was devastated. One woman suggested that maybe her husband wasn't happy because he wasn't feeling important in the relationship anymore. And man, did that woman get bashed for saying that. But it turns out that is exactly what the initial woman was open to hearing. She talked to her husband, and that was part of the problem for him. Now, I know that we are all in charge of our own happiness, but there does come a time in many marriages when things become stale. You don't tell each other how you feel as much anymore. You stop talking on a regular basis. I'm actually a little worried about myself and my husband because, we all have to get up in the morning and don't even talk to each other. We get on our phones and start doing what we do. It's not good. There's got to be more connection. Now, the woman came back to the group and told everyone that was exactly what she needed to hear. And she worked with her husband to get his needs met, as I assume they discussed some of her needs as well, because that's what a partnership is about, right? Getting your needs met and sharing your life with that person. If you aren't happy and you are in a position to discuss ways to change that, then absolutely, that's what you should do. Or at least try. If it's a different type of relationship, it can be even more sticky. I'm not even going to get into the parent-child relationship because I've not been a parent, and I know that, especially like teenagers and stuff, they just kind of go off on their own and they don't pay any attention to you anymore. I did not go through that. I have no advice on it. But I've read many books about it. Not parenting books, just novels. But, I've had a tough go with my own mother. We were a lot alike. We butted heads often, but as she grew older, she grew even more unhappy. She somehow got it in her mind that her spouse and children were the people who needed to step up to make her happy. She wanted all of us to do whatever she wanted to attain that happiness. Now, as most of us know, it does not work that way. Even if I would have done everything she wanted, which I didn't, she still wouldn't have been truly happy. Maybe in the moment, but your happiness only comes from within. That doesn't mean you can't ask what you feel you need from the people in your life because they enhance your life. Thinking about the last discussion about the spouse, that seems more of a lifestyle issue. You know what I mean? Like you can be happy with yourself, but not necessarily with what is going on in your day-to-day life, which may have been what was causing the issues that he felt he had with his marriage. Do you see the difference? Are you picking up what I'm throwing down? I hope so. But when it came to my mom, she became very self-centered as she aged and very bitter. I would go as far as to say that she may have even been a narcissist. In my relationship with her, I felt like I was never good enough. She was never happy with what I had to offer. She always wanted more from me. And when I didn't give her what she wanted, she made her disappointment be felt immensely. Now, I have some guilt that I didn't do more. I also know that there's times that I gave her a hard time about certain things. I try to let myself off the hook by saying there was probably a lot of unresolved anger at the way I'd been treated a lot of my life. There had come a time when I was older and I asked her, I told her actually that she was very negative and I was tending to be that way as well. And I was working so hard on myself to try and not be a negative person. But when I got around her, it was all negativity all the time. And it just felt easier and normal to just be pulled into that. And I asked her if she could not be so negative. And, I don't recall the conversation being that difficult, but nothing really changed. You can't really change other people. But when I got older, she also asked if I would go to therapist with her so we could work on our relationship. And I actually declined. And this is the reason why. When I was a child, she took me and my siblings to a group therapist, and she told us all to be completely honest when we were there about how we felt. So I mentioned that she sometimes yelled at us just for scraping the side of the cereal bowl in the morning. So she made a joke of it by saying how loud we did it. Everybody laughed. Even the therapist kind of brushed it off. So I felt foolish and a little betrayed that I was told to be honest. And when I was laughed off. Now, you would think that being older, I wouldn't allow that to happen, right? But no, I'm afraid that wasn't the case. My mom had this way of making passive-aggressive remarks that I often wasn't really able to understand or decipher what she was saying until later. Like, I knew that immediately I would get my back up, and I knew something was wrong. I knew that what she said was just not the nicest thing, but it didn't always just hit me all at once. So I just didn't want to put myself in that situation again. I do have some guilt about it now that she's gone, but there was a lot wrong in our relationship, and neither of us were innocent in how our relationship turned out. Now, my mother left this world with very hard feelings toward me, and had I known that, I may have had the courage to cut ties years ago, as I considered many times. Now, I never did, because you just crave that relationship with your parents, but man, it just never worked out for me. I just couldn't do what she wanted me to do. And in turn, she just always made me feel like a bad person. But meanwhile, I am working hard to forgive her because I really want to. I want to remember the good times. And as of right now, remembering good times with her seems like a betrayal to myself since she treated me so harshly at the end. But I'm working on it. And I think I'm going to get there soon. So send me some positive vibes. But if you're in a situation like this, tell the other person what you need from them or what you don't want from them. Have a real heart-to-heart and see what you can come up with. It's always best to try. And if it doesn't work out the way you hope, then you may want to consider alternate solutions. If you can't grow in one direction because your back is up against the wall, then see which way you can move. But don't let someone stop you from growing. Don't let someone make you feel bad about yourself. It's the most important factor in living a happy, fulfilling life. If you like this episode, be a pal and leave me a review or share a screenshot with your friends. That would be great of you. And also, if you feel you could benefit from some personal positivity coaching, I'm your gal. Schedule a free call to see what I can do to help you live life better. Meanwhile, I hope you're having a fantastic week. As I said earlier, I hope you are moving and a grooving and being a badass. And you know I'm here cheering you on. Thank you for listening to The Hopefulist. Now, don't you feel good? Make sure you come back next week. See you then.